Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another glorious edition of Ask That. Today is a fun day. Today, if you were paying attention, we made announcements for tickets. We made announcements of speakers, but that's not going to stop us from having another Ask That. With me today, I have Jilea Hemmings. Jilea, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I have been looking forward to this conversation. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Before we dive into what is going to be a fruitful conversation about failure and failing up and failing down and wherever else that one thing goes, why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Jilea. I am based out of the Illinois area. I run a tech company called Tyme, which is all about improving efficiency, and it came out of, once again, failing and trying to figure out how to do something better. A lot of my best ideas come out of that. And it's a scheduling application for physicians and pharmaceutical reps to make them better and be able to see each other and respect each other's time. But I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. I think I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad, my mom, and my grandparents were all entrepreneurs, so it really I think I was born into it. And even when I didn't even think that's the direction I was going to go in, I have 3 awesome children, and they're another one of my businesses came from them. So all of the challenges and problems I had, I was like, oh, there needs to be a fix, a solve. And funny enough, all of my businesses, I've always worked with my husband. So that's also something that's a little different. You know, some people say, how do you work with your spouse? But we're not only best friends, but always business partners. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, we have a lot in common, actually, as my wife and I also run multiple businesses. We have failed multiple times as well, which I'm not so sure this conversation may be a lot of healing just for me and all of this. So, and I have 2 kids. We could never take that stretch to go to 3. So I applaud you in your serial kids / entrepreneurial of craziness, because I know there are times where our kids come to us and say, "It's been too much, mommy and daddy. Please come back home," even though home is where the office is. So crazy. So let's start with, a serial entrepreneur. What does that really mean for you, and why serial? Like, is that just a trendy word that we're using because, that seems like more digits on the old Instagram title, or what does that history really look like?
Absolutely. I mean, well, beyond just coming from a family of seeing it, for me, I think I always fell into it. I just always felt like there was a way to do things better. So it's happened that through starting and actually learning from each experience, I always say that if you really love something, you come right back into it, right? Like, so if you do it again. So when I say serial, it's not so much digits as it is, I will always have something that I'm working on, that I'm running and driving. That's just what I love to do. I love business creation. I love business development, but not so much that I have 15 things going on at the same time. Sure. But more so that I just love this space. And entrepreneurship is really not for everybody. I always say that. I said, it's crazy. There's no such thing as a 9 to 5. You're working all the time. It takes a lot of sacrifice. But, with all that, it's still, I think, the biggest rush and the biggest excitement I've ever experienced. And there's nothing like starting and creating something from scratch and seeing it come to life and people actually want it and buy it. To me, there's nothing better. So it's my national high.
I agree, and with that comes a lot of panic attacks, at least on my side of things. A lot of sleepless nights, and I got away from that a bit when I was younger. I kind of went down the corporate line. It seemed like the proper thing to do, and it really, really just wasn't who I was, even though I had other crazy things on the side. And but it's real, like. The fear is real, especially when there are kids involved, and I don't know. You always have to put food on the table.
I went through the corporate realm as well. I thought that was going to be my path. I saw what my parents went through, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to go the corporate route and work my way up. So after the first layoff scare, and then you get to the second, third, fourth, and fifth, you realize, you have children to support and you got to come up with something else. So I kind of was forced into it, but it was actually the right thing for me to do. And then I became addicted to it.
So what did they look like? I mean, was it you started a thing, sold a thing? Like what? How was the progression of entrepreneurialism?
Absolutely. So I started actually after the fifth time of almost being laid off, and it was not my turn to actually go. I actually have three children, and my oldest son at the time was diagnosed with autism. Okay. So I learned immediately at that point about the importance of diet, right? And so I said, okay, I have my son, he's already on the spectrum. I really want to start making these healthy meals for him. I'm sitting here trying to keep my job, especially with all these layoffs happening. You're trying to do the best job you can. And time is something that I think a lot of us, are always looking to get more of, right? And so I said, there's no way I can make these healthy meals every day. And I had the guilt that I'm sure a lot of parents feel of having to go through that drive-through line and saying, you know what, we can do this. And when I went to the grocery store, I just couldn't find healthy options that I felt good about. I was like, it was just terrible kind of processed food. And I said, a lot of my friends also explained had the same issue and explained that they also had the same concern. So I said, you know what, why don't we try and create something? I've always known how to cook. I was like, let's go in the kitchen, try and whip up a few things. And we did, and my children liked them. And I said, all right. And I started testing it on the neighbors' children, and they liked them. And I said, all right, let's now get out of our warm market and go into like farmers markets, which we did. And we started to see a lot of success there. And with that, that's how we started Greenie Tots, and we got into Whole Foods, and then it started to expand because we really had the best tasting kids meal on the market, and we were the only meatless company in the country that was focusing on meatless healthy meals for children. So with that, that's how I kind of jumped in. It was out of a need, and when the need wasn't there, we stayed. And how we ended up, actually, it's an interesting story. We talk about failing. We were looking to get capital, and we started, because of how it started, we kind of grew organically. We self-funded the business. So by self-funding the business, we were taking every ounce of capital that we had while still working full-time, trying to make it work. And it got to a point where we just had no more capital to give. And even though we were doing really well, it takes a lot of money to make a food business run. So we started to go and apply for Shark Tank, and we made it to the second semifinal round. And then we told Shark Tank no, because I had an investor that came on board that was going to fully fund us. And that turned into a disaster, and it didn't happen. Everybody's like, you told Shark Tank no? And I was like, yes, we did. So with that, we went back to Shark Tank with our head between our legs, like, please give us another shot, which they did. But I think they felt we were going to fail. So at the end, they told us that they weren't going to move forward with us. But that was kind of the start to the end, because financing is extremely key. So we ended up having to close our Greenie Tots business. But I learned so many lessons over that 6.5-year period. I said, you know what? We really need to pay these forward. And I wrote a book about it, and then I started consulting about it, and that's how the second business came about, was just really helping others, understand how to do it better, how to avoid making those same mistakes. And I realized through that experience that while I like to eat food, while I was a decent cook, I would say, it wasn't my passion, right? And so if that business didn't work, if I went back into the food business, you'd say, okay, she really loves food and that's her real passion. No, it's really the business aspect of it. I enjoyed that more so than the laborious cooking that we had to do in the beginning. So,
well, I mean, making it 6 years, I mean, I think those first 5 years are ridiculously hard, especially when you're slinging it on the side and self-funding. What was it that what was the problem in the business that you couldn't get over the hump from the funding side of things?
No, absolutely. So with the food business, it's very interesting, right? It's like you sell your products to grocery stores, and you have to pay for that shelf space unless you can find a way to get it at a discount or not have to pay. Like local vendors a lot of times don't have to pay for shelf space, and we definitely utilize that in the Florida market where we were. But you have to pay for everything else to market that product in the retail realm. So if you're selling a product to them for $2 and then they're now selling it on the shelf for $6, and then you have to give samples of your product, you're taking them off the shelf at $6 and not $2. Everything was done at retail if you did any kind of promotions. Buy one, get one free. It's at the retail price, not the wholesale price. So, there's a lot. It's a volume business. The margins in food are so tiny that it's all about volume. And and then you have to make the product in advance, and you have to front all of that money. Even though you're doing well, it's a ton of money to advance. So I think when I can say that we self-funded a business that was sold nationwide and Safeways, Whole Foods, Giant Eagles, was it a success? Absolutely. But we had a tremendous amount of failures, and unfortunately we had to close. And it was like, you talk about 3 children, that was my 4th. I was devastated. I don't even think I could watch Shark Tank for about 2 years after that. I was like, I don't want to hear the music. I don't want to hear any part of it. And my mom loved that show, so she was always watching it in our house. And I was like, can you please stop? Because it was just a constant reminder of one of the biggest mistakes we made, that we probably would still be in business today had we not, told them no initially. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe hindsight's always 20/20, right? I mean, you could have ended up in a place that, if food wasn't necessarily your passion, now you got this laborious just grind of we're doing the same thing, and that could have caught up as well. So
right. I mean, we had gotten out of the point of making food. After the first couple of years, we got a co-packer, so then we became more of a marketing company than a manufacturing company. So we were out of the laborious part of it, but at the same time, I know what it takes to run, and you have to do everything yourself before you can outsource any of those things. So for me, I was like, never. I don't think I want to do that again.
So
begged us to bring it back. I'm like, no.
Yeah. So what were some of the biggest learnings from that? I mean, what were some of your biggest failures?
Absolutely. So the first one, I think for sure, and it's one that I think is made so easily, is not having a cap on the amount of capital that we were going to spend in the business, right? Because of how it started, I have this cookie idea, and you're like, sure, I'll start buying the ingredients. Sure, I'll get, I'll buy the first set of boxes and labels and this and that. But then it keeps going, right? And there's never that cutoff point. And you really have to say, there's really something important about other people's money. OPM is extremely important. And then everyone wants to see that you have skin in the game, obviously, but you need to set a limit, right? So that was a big thing for us, because at one point we were leveraging, do we pay our mortgage, or do we keep our product on the shelves, right? And so at that point, you've gone too far, right? And it's you need to pull you back, but you're so far in, you see the success, and you can almost taste it, but you really need to work on raising capital. So it's about really kind of saying the roadmap, where do you want to go, and understanding how much capital you have to invest, and really starting to look outside. But I mean, at the same time, you want to be very careful with who you invest with as well. And that was another lesson, right? Because we told Shark Tank no, not because we didn't have an option, because we thought we had the, an even better option that turned out to not be the best. So that would be number one. Number two is definitely just not really even put all your eggs in one basket too. Because I feel like a lot of times we focus completely on this, and just how with you might have a job, but you also are investing in real estate and doing other things to, supplement your income. The same thing needs to apply with a business as well. And I think a lot of times, and it's very easy to become kind of laser focused that nothing else matters, and you become completely 100% dedicated. It's something just as a balance to try and do if possible. And then one of the biggest ones I think really came from our investor situation. You always think that because they have money, that they have expertise, right? Yeah. To listen to what they say. And that is completely rubbish and trash for sure, because at the end of the day, you built the business from scratch. You know what it takes to run. You know what the issues are. You know what the ups are. You know all the nuances. They might have capital that they probably, gained through other businesses, and they might be experts in that, but you are the expert in your business. And I think a lot of times we don't take the right deals, or we listen to the ones with the money more so than what we know is right, just because we feel like, well, they have the money. So, I saw ourselves get burnt in that way, because he was one of the ones who said, what are you going on Shark Tank for? He goes, another company can see you on TV, and then they can come and just take your entire idea. And then, we're out before we even start. And I'm like, but it takes, I know better. It takes a ton, even if you have money, it's still going to take time to develop the product and make it all happen. And I should have definitely not listened. And then and the next thing is that you have to understand that they told us when we were in that process about contracts and signing contracts and how you have to have a phenomenal lawyer. But the reality is, and I saw it happen not only with us, but other colleagues as well, if they have more money than you, even if you're 100% right, it's very hard to win, right? It's very hard to win. So you have to be, the true lesson is be careful who you go into bed with. This is like a marriage and a relationship like no other. You want to see if they've invested with others. You want to talk to them. You want to vet them as much as they're vetting you. It's not just about the money. It's about what kind of person are they, because they might, just like when you're dating someone, everyone doesn't show their worst self. They show their best self, right? And you start to see their worst self when it's too late. So I think it's really important to understand your worth and your value. That was a huge lesson that we learned.
So you fail, and you'd like to think you failed forward. But sure. I'd have to think that takes a whole lot of self-reflection and kind of picking oneself back up off the ground. I know that we've had a few failed businesses, and they sting. They sting when lots of money is flying out of one's pocket, and you sit there and kind of question your own kind of self-value and what's next. And you seem to have naturally found like kind of another place to go. Was that via self-reflection, or did the book slap you over the head?
No, it absolutely was. I had a mentor, and I do believe in that. That's another lesson. Make sure you have someone who's gone through what you're going through. They might not be exactly, they weren't in the frozen, food business that we were, but they were still in the food. So a lot of the experiences will be similar. I definitely think it's extremely important to have a mentor that you can call on and just run ideas past that's not as emotionally invested to your business as you are. And one thing that, I was in one of those periods of like, I don't know if we're going to be able to make it, and we were struggling financially, and we were like, I don't know what to do. And he said, what are you afraid of? And I said, well, I'm afraid of failure. He's like, oh, what does that look like? And I was like, the business closing. He was like, no, like dig deeper. And I said, well, I'm afraid that, we'll have to close, which will be devastating. Then we'll have to figure out how we're going to generate income for ourselves to support our children. And he goes, well, what will you do? I said, well, I mean, I'm not going to let my children starve. I mean, I would go and, take my MBA and go probably find a job somewhere and, start again. And he's like, okay. And then what would you do? He goes, then you'll probably start to make money again, and you'll be able to get back on your feet, and you would recover, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, so now you know what failure looks like. So get the hell back out there and start selling. Get back out to doing what you love to do. And I think it's kind of interesting that he said that, because I think a lot of times we speak about what we're scared to fail. But like, what does that really mean? And I don't think a lot of times you really dig deep and explore what that is. Because once you really face it, then you're like, okay, well, if this happens, what do you do next? And then you have a plan, then it's not so scary anymore. Right. Sure. But it's like, but a lot of times I think we think of it in the top level, aspect, and we really don't dig deep to understand what that looks like. And so for me, absolutely, when we did actually fail, we had to go through that process. But, we actually had thought about it beforehand, not that was our goal, but at least we knew what it looked like. And we started to say, well, what went right? What went wrong? Right. Hence, told truth about building a startup. Those are the 17 lessons that if I had to do it all over again, those are the differences I would make. And I felt like, and they were not just for me. I said any business, should pay attention to these 17 lessons, because it can really change the trajectory of where you go. So yeah, ton of self-reflection, ton.
What would you say went really well? Because I mean, so far it's been like doom and gloom, right? We failed, we lost a bunch of money.
No, a lot went well. I mean, first of all, just the idea that I was like, okay, there's a need, and you know what? There needs to be healthy meals for children. It's not here. Okay, let's figure out how to make it. And the fact that we were able to create a brand from our head without being in the food industry. Yes, we had MBAs, but we had no idea what the food business was. Sure. And be able to get your product in what I call the Harvard of grocery stores, being Whole Foods, even though we started with 6 stores. We started with 6, we did well, we went to 9, then we got the entire Florida region. Then they actually invested in our business because they believed in it. And then we started getting into California and the Midwest. Like we had, traction and growth with like the most stringent grocery store you can get into is Whole Foods because of ingredients, and we were there, right? Yeah. So that's, Safeway is the second largest grocery store in the nation. So the fact that we were in there, tremendous success, and then the fact that we were sold in the U.S. and abroad. I mean, our brand was great. I mean, I had stories of parents telling me my kids will only eat your vegetables, or, my daughter will only eat your meals, or I traveled to 2 stores because they were off the shelf. I mean, when you have, and we still get calls to this day, where can I find you and so forth. it definitely stings, because we knew that it was bigger than us.
Yeah.
It was definitely bigger than us. So tremendous success, and a lot of lessons learned for sure.
Where part of growing a business is scaling oneself. At what point did it become, this is going to sound wrong, I was going to say less about you and more about you enabling? Because in the beginning, right, you and whomever are doing whatever they can to kind of, you do everything. And at some point, you just can't do everything, right? You have to let go. You have to enable others to do that. Where was that tipping point for you guys? Was it like personal inside of like, I can't do this anymore? Or did you have like a forethought plan of like, we get here and we're going to need this kind of person, or I don't have any of this, so I need to hire this person to knows how to do, I don't know, marketing?
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit earlier about how with the food business, margins are really tight, right? And so it becomes a volume business. So we knew that in order for us to even stay in the business, we were going to have to increase where our product was placed and increase our product placement. And we knew at that point that, the volume that we could produce was above our scale, but we also, we went and scaled up we actually were based in Florida. We flew to Chicago and met with like one of the best co-packers, and they were like rich and small for them. So they couldn't help us.
Interesting.
So we found a co-packer that could handle our scale and also handle our growth. In the New Jersey area that was affordable and that actually worked within our budget, but we knew we had to make that shift, and we were starting to get contracts in shelf placement with other grocery stores, and we had to be able to meet that demand. So for us, it was the only way to stay in the game, but it also allowed us to become more efficient and allow us to really grow, because then it was standardized, and which is different. When you have to make 1 million meals a day, it's very, very tough. But they have equipment and machinery that can make your hands just upgrade. It's just a complete upgrade. So still, it was something that we had to do for our business, for us to stay. But another lesson that we learned, and that's something else, because you talked about scalability. When we look back and we reflected, we grew too fast. So that was another thing as well. So had we stayed in the Florida market, let's say, we probably would once again still be in business today because we could afford Florida. But it was once we started going outside of that and pushing the limits and the boundaries, because we knew that was what it was going to take to grow. We also realized, were we a celebrity enough where we originally started? And I always say, you want a celebrity in the market where you start before you start jumping around to market to market to market, because you have to have something that's sustaining your growth, right? You just can't say, I hope that it's going to grow here and I'll be able to make this happen. So you really want to be a local celebrity. I always say that to anyone that, any of my clients that I work with.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question too. And but like, if you would have just stayed in Florida, do you think you would have been sustainable? Or were you kind of caught in that catch-22? It's like, it's easy to say, no, I shouldn't grow. Like, I want to own it, but if owning it isn't enough, then...
Right. I think we would have definitely been in business. Would we have been able to make as much of a profit? No. But, we would have been able to really have that down to a cookie-cutter science and know that it's sustaining itself, so that we could then take those resources and then build into another market. We were like okay, we know Florida, we understand it well. Okay, let's go here. So we were starting to split our resources, right? And we should have slowed down. But when we actually got nationwide distribution, which is another success, right? When you can say that anywhere in the country you can get your product, which is not, tough to get into these distributors. Yeah. We wanted to make sure that we showed value to them too, right? We wanted to show them that we had a lot of placement, so they wouldn't want to drop us. It's a really tough thing, but if I look at it again, I will say I think we should have slowed down on our growth, because if the goal is to be here for the long term, then we would still be here, and we could then have taken a longer time to raise capital and those different things to help support our growth in other markets.
Sure. So fast forward to today, and you have yet another business called Best Time. You've completely gone the opposite direction. We've gone from from food to tech, which, tech is totally known for its wellness and non-sugary like devices.
Exactly.
First, let's talk about what it is, and then let's dive into how you got there.
Sure. So I actually I thought I was in retirement from being an entrepreneur. I said, well, you know what? Let me just help others, you know. So I enjoy this a little bit. So, but I always, once again, I went back into, you know, when we had a plan, what does our failure plan look like? So I went back into what I started with, which is in corporate America. I always was in the pharmaceutical industry. So I was a drug rep for many years and, you know, came out of it, went into the food. And then, you know, I said, let's go back, you know, it's something easy that I know how to do. And I was surprised that the same problems that when I left the industry were still there with regards to how pharmaceutical reps and doctors interact. So I'm sure everyone's been to a doctor's office before. You're waiting to see the doctor, and then all of a sudden this person rolls in with their bag. They go back before you see the doctor. They leave before you see the doctor, and you're like, "What the hell?" You know, I'm here too, and I'm paying to see the doctor, right? Yeah. So you know, a lot of times what we find and what most people don't understand is that it takes a lot to even go. We have to drive to the office. We have to try and make sure it's the right time, and a lot of times we go there and they say it's a bad date, but all that we went into and the planning of what we were going to speak about and all that is all negated if they turn you away, and vice versa. You know, doctors want to see their patients. That's number one priority. Yep. And then all of a sudden this rep stops by, that's throwing off their entire schedule. And while they still want to talk to them and they're providing resources and samples, you know, your patients come first and it throws everything off. So I said, you know what, there's a better way to do this. I said, the technology could make this so much better. And a lot of times when you start to schedule with these offices, they're still using paper calendars. You know, you're like, paper calendars? Who's still using paper calendars? Right? But it happens more often than you think. So I said, you know, if we could have an app where the doctor says, these are the best days for me, if it happens to be a crazy day, they can go in and say no reps today, and then all of a sudden they could be rerouted so they never have to disturb the office, the patients, the whole setup. That would be amazing, and I think something completely doable. And that's really what Best Time is. Best Time is going to make the medical industry, as far as the pharmaceutical and physician relationship, much more efficient, because now doctors in 3 steps create a profile, set their availability, and then, you know, reps can come in at those times. It works out so much better. And the same thing, that they need to order samples, that they can get to reps in real time. And it ensures that everyone's time is respected and you actually get the face time you're looking for. And you're not having a whole, you know, for physicians, having a whole room of upset patients waiting to see them and come in and out and they still wait. So
how in the hell did you start this? I mean, this is software.
Exactly.
I mean, but just how in the hell did you start this?
Exactly. So I knew that my background obviously was not in software, right? But I didn't understand how to build a business. And I said, you know what? I think that, you know, my partners, interestingly enough, were the right partners, because I had this idea for several years. It was kind of on my list of amazing ideas that, you know, if I found the right partners, the right funding, I would do. And my business partners are actually a physician and an office administrator. So you have the representative side, you have the doctor side, you have the administrative side. I was like, this is the perfect synergy. This is the right time, because now all the pain points that we all have can now be built into this solution. So we outsourced our development of our app, obviously, because, you know, it's not our expertise. While we are starting to teach ourselves now, you know, you cannot get into the tech business and not start learning something. You will be forced into learning. So, you know, while there's been a lot of learning curves in the process, I will not deny that. You know, we did things that most people didn't think we could do. They're like, you're trying to build an app in 4 months and launch? And they're like, that's impossible, especially outsourcing it. And where you're outsourcing it, absolutely impossible. But we were able to meet the deadline because I'm a driver. And I just knew that obviously we're going to have, you know, different rollouts, and we've had different rollouts since we've launched, but, it's been really exciting, and it's just solving a need. It's like the hooded towel. I think when I heard about the hooded towels, it's just so common. I'm like, you know, these things that you just assume are there. I feel Best Time is one of those things you just assume was always there, that's not there. And it came out of a need. I was like, I'm tired of, you know, driving and having, you know, the door slam saying that it's not a good day. I'm like, my time is just as, you know, valued as their time. And I understand that their priorities are different from mine, but I think we could do this better where everybody would be happy. So that's how it came about.
So you get a product, you build a product. Now, how are you getting people on that product?
Sure. So we have multiple methods. So we have a referral-based system. Where physicians, once they learn about it and are excited, because they're just so excited that someone actually cares about their time, right? They're like, and And so they've been really gun ho, and every time they hear about it, they're like, sign me up right away. And then they want to tell 10 of their buddies about it. So the referrals is one. We have account managers on the ground, so they're going office to office and sharing the best time solution with them, which has been great. We're using social media for sure, and we're doing a lot of trade shows. So there's like big medical conferences, and we have booths there, and we're just sharing the message of best time all around. And our revenue driver is very interesting. So for physicians' offices, it's free. So it's really not like a cost barrier that we have to deal with, because our revenue is created through the representative, because any pharmaceutical company that can help their representatives get more face time with their doctors will pay all day. So we have a subscription-based service that reps pay for. On a monthly basis, or they can pay on a yearly basis, and it ensures that they'll be able to see have access to our system so they can book time with the physicians when it's the best time for them.
Yeah, you're right. It seems like something that should have always been there. Like, it seems very obvious that why wouldn't this be the case? So how long has Best Time been out there then?
Sure. So we actually just launched in February. So we've only been live. Yeah, so we're going into our second month, and we're launched in the Fort Lauderdale market. So there's a lot, because we're basing it actually on the trade shows. We're kind of following their circuit, the PriMed show, which reaches thousands and thousands of physicians at one time. So it's been really exciting. We've got 2 account managers on the ground. They're making a lot of traction, and they're getting doctors signed up every day. So it's been an awesome start, a really awesome start.
Wow. And how big is the overall company?
Big in
people, number of people.
Number of people, sure. So now we have, there's 8 of us on the team now. So we're still very lean, keeping it lean. We're not trying to expand too fast, for sure. And what's really great is that all of us as founders are very active, and we all have different roles, and we're bringing our skill set. I think that's always important. And they start off as our investors. But you have all different kinds of investors, right? And it's not just about the money. It's like, what else can you bring to the table?
That's right.
And, they're bringing their sweat equity to the table as well. And if you can get that, that's, to me, a really sweet spot,
Sure. So what does a team of 8 people look like? What are the roles and responsibilities across that?
Sure. So I'm working a lot with the app development, and then also just overall growth and scalability of the organization. Jamie, which is my husband and also partner, as I said, we're always in every business together. He's been actually working, and he manages all of the employees and contractors that we have with regards to growth and sales and customer retention. Sure. So he's focused on that. Our other founder focuses on the finances, and our other partner, he's still actually a practicing physician. So he's part-time, still a physician, and he keeps helping definitely with the development side, trying to make sure that we are definitely addressing the needs of all the physicians. So he helps out a lot with that, and also the development there. And then the rest of our staff are actually on the ground. So we have 2 account managers in Fort Lauderdale, and we actually just hired 2 more in Houston. So that makes up our 8.
But no love in Chicago, even though you're in Chicago.
No love in Chicago. We're coming, though. We're coming.
No, you're already here.
I
think you're confused about how this works.
I know we're already here. We're coming. By October, we will definitely be here. So
that's good. Not well, at the end of every one of these, I like to acknowledge the person who's joined, and with that being said, I certainly want to thank you for being here today. More importantly, I want to thank you for sharing. Might see now our phone's going off. I want to thank you for sharing your story, not just with us, but with everybody, because I think, like when we started talking about this whole thing originally, being able to identify one failure and be honest about it, and pay it forward, talk about, like, it's very helpful, not just to me, I'm sure it is for others as well, and it's infectious through how you talk and what you do. So with that, thank you, and obviously you're speaking now at that conference this year, and you're going to get inundated with all kinds of geeky people who understand software quite well.
Exactly, which would be great. We're always looking for a CTO right now.
Oh yeah. Oh, maybe we should talk.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, I think just thank you, and with that, and the best of luck and everything that you're part of.
No, thank you so much for the time. I love our conversation and just the opportunity. And looking forward to the conference definitely in August. We'll be there. My whole family will be there, so it'll be great.
So my last question then for you would be, what would be the Jalea piece of advice for everybody who's listening? What would be your, hey, this is this is this is something you should go do or go think about?
I would say that my one piece of advice is just to take the leap, right? Every single day, if you have an idea, if you have a dream, I always say you really need to look at it, you really need to pursue it because every day we build others' dreams, right? And the hardest part is taking the first step. And if you can take the first step and you're open, there'll be a ton of people like myself who are always there to hold you up even when you feel like falling down. So I always say, just take the first step. It's not about being perfect. It's not
Yeah.
about getting everything right. I mean, mistakes are how you learn. You learn from mistakes. It's about not too big and not making the same mistake twice. Making sure you learn so that you don't have to repeat those same mistakes. But overall, just go for it. That's really my big lesson. I feel a lot of times people say, I wish I could have, I should have, I had that same idea. And a lot of times they just don't take that first step.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, with that, that is where we will end it. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Jalea take that first step, and that first step for us is giving us a like or a thumbs up or a subscribe. Uh, but in all honesty, I would love to hear your stories. What failures did it help? Jalea and I will be in the comments. Leave us a note. Show us, tell us, whatever you'd like to do. Start that conversation up. Jileas, thank you for today, and I certainly love to continue to stay in touch. And with that, everybody have a nice day. We'll see you
Have a great
tomorrow.
day.